All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Lively You Virtual Learning Academy program. Our topic today is Outsmart the Scammers. This presentation will allow for opportunities for strategies to help protect you and the ones you love. We'll share how to spot certain red flags that may indicate a fraudulent encounter, resources you can turn to in an event you or your loved one is targeted, and steps you can take now to help protect yourself and your loved ones. Please welcome Chad Plontz from Edward Jones.
All right. Well, thank you, Danielle. Appreciate the introduction. I'll go ahead and see if I can share my screen real quick here with everyone. And there we go. So you should be seeing the screen that states Outsmart the Scammers. So yeah, appreciate everybody for jumping on the Zoom call today here to talk about outsmarting the scammers. Once again, my name is Chad Plontz. I'm with Edward Jones here in town in Bowling Green. We're at 519 West Wooster Street. So very important topic today, outsmarting the scammers, right? So I became a financial advisor because I have a passion for investing, but also helping folks with their financial goals. So, this is also a big reason why I'm here to present with Wood County Committee on Aging, and that's to make sure we're educating the community. So I do appreciate everybody jumping on, and today we'll be focusing on a topic that is becoming an increasing concern for investors and consumers, and that's protecting yourself from fraud. So we will dive in, and so your first slide here. So as I just mentioned just a moment ago, fraud is becoming an increasing concern for all of us. You may know friends or even loved ones who have been targeted in fraudulent schemes. So through scammers' tactics, they are seemingly becoming even more complex and prevalent these days. But the good news is, there are red flags that you can identify and basic steps you can take to protect yourself and those you care about. So this seminar will help you learn more about how to spot those red flags. So throughout our time together, we'll share a few stories and illustrate some of the more common forms of scams that we see, and some resources you can use in case you or a loved one is targeted. So fraud may be more prevalent than you think. So a couple different things to consider here when you're seeing this fraud by the numbers slide. So according to the 2019 Identity Theft Fraud Study, there was 14.4 million Americans that had their identity stolen in 2018, and that was either through individual scenarios or through data breaches through companies. So fraud and financial abuse schemes targeting the elderly are growing problems in the United States, and that costs victims at least $2.9 billion with a B, billion annually, and that's according to the Department of Justice. So the National Council of Aging finds that 1 elder in 10 is victimized financially. However, only 1 case in 14 is actually reported. So possibly because the victim may be too embarrassed. In addition, he or she may want to avoid calling attention to a situation that had appeared to be in control. So the 90 that you're seeing there, the 90%, well, nearly 90% of abusers are people the victims actually trust, according to the National Center on Elder Abuse, which may be surprising to some, right? The idea is it might be somebody that's very close to you, maybe even in the same household. So you may recall a story of actor Mickey Rooney. I don't know if anybody recalls this from back in 2011. Mickey Rooney actually testified in 2011 that elder abuse, he was a victim of elder abuse, having been financially exploited by actually a family member, right? So Rooney said that he was afraid to seek help because he was overwhelmed with fear and anger and disbelief, which you could imagine. Rooney's conservator actually pointed out that Rooney was completely competent and made reference to the idea that fighting abuse can be complicated due to an individual's personal fears or loss of control. So this is why it's critical to just be prepared and to take steps to protect yourself and those you care about. It's important to report fraud because a scammer will defraud another individual if he or she is not stopped. That's just how they're programmed to do it, right? They're going to keep doing it until somebody stops them. So there's a good chance you may be here because you're concerned for a loved one or a friend who may have been targeted by a scammer, or perhaps you may learn some tips today just to protect yourself or your loved ones from being victims of fraud in the future. So my goal is to empower you with the information and resources to protect yourself and the ones you love. So hopefully after our time together, you'll be prepared to act quickly and calmly and to, once again, outsmart the scammers, right? So as an overview here, we'll walk through 4 common fraud scenarios. I'll also share red flags you can use to help identify a scam. And then I'll share some additional steps to consider to protect you and your loved ones further, as well as some resources available if you believe you have been the target of fraud. So we will move on to the first one here. And that first one is collection fraud. So what we're going to do here is just start with a story. It's actually from our Edward Jones Fraud Investigations team, which is made up of a dedicated group of professionals here with Edward Jones to investigate red flags and protect client information here with Edward Jones. So this is a powerful resource that allows me as a financial advisor to advocate for clients while remaining neutral when fraud concerns arise. So as we go here, I'm going to kind of read a story to you. Obviously, this is not a unique scenario. You may have heard of scenarios like this in the past, actually, or before. So this scenario is Terry. We'll go with a person named Terry, right? Terry received a phone call from the IRS agent, or from an IRS agent, right? And said she owed back taxes and needed to pay the outstanding amount immediately. So IRS call, right? Which this time of year, this is the time of year you may receive that, right? We're near tax filing time or coming up to it. So this is a timely fraudulent event, right? So Terry didn't recall receiving a notice in the mail and told the caller she believed he was in error. The caller then told Terry if she didn't pay the minimum amount on the outstanding debt, the police would be sent to arrest her. So Terry was shocked. She didn't believe she owed the money, but even if it was a mistake, she wondered if she should make a payment to buy some time so she could get the matter straightened out. Well, the caller said he could accept payment over the phone via credit card, or she could provide her checking account information. Well, Terry considered her next move. Though the person claimed to be from the IRS, an organization that Terry recognized as having authority in the matter, something didn't feel right. So she asked for a number to call the man back and then contacted a trusted friend. So luckily, Terry recognized some red flags and gave no personal information over the phone. So once again, this story could have ended much differently, right? The scammer could have collected all kinds of information, personal information ranging from social security number to banking information, or even a credit card or a checking account information over the phone, right? So in this scenario, Terry had, kind of been savvy enough to notice those red flags. So some things obviously to just be wary of, right? If you don't know or can't verify the identity of the person contacting you, well, in this case, Terry's caller, claimed to be from the IRS. However, there were several variations on this scam. Also, this is known as collection fraud, not necessarily, an IRS scam. For instance, the caller may have called and said, we're from the utility company. They may threaten to cut off the service if you refuse to make an immediate payment. So the caller may even threaten to send a collector to your home or workplace. So once again, how can you and your loved ones know if this is a scam? Well, closely look at the payment request. Where do you usually send your tax payment? Well, the answer hopefully is the IRS or the State Department of Revenue, right? However, a scammer may ask you to mail cash to a third party, or even give him or her the credit card information over the phone. So just things to keep in mind. Now, don't always, if you have, seems like everything, all phones now have some sort of caller ID on them, right? So don't necessarily trust the caller ID that you're seeing, right? Because collection fraud typically originates in a foreign country. And unfortunately, there's pretty sophisticated software now that allows the caller to make it look like it's either coming from a local number or even a specific agency. So you don't necessarily want to rely on caller ID in that scenario. So another thing, just do your own investigation. So IRS scams are popular during tax season. At other times of the year, once again, you could be getting calls about utility, like a utility bill coming due, and they're creating a sense of urgency, with the threat of shutting off service or sending somebody to your house. So if you get a call like that, simply hang up and call the company or the agency at the number you know to be correct, right? So if you ever feel like, oh, well, this is something I don't know about, right? I'm fairly certain my bills are paid, or that I'm, haven't heard anything from the IRS yet. Once again, collect information, do your research, and call somebody back. That's one way of kind of protecting yourself. And then, of course, don't fall for scare tactics, right? The whole idea is that they're going to try and create that urgency. They're going to threaten to send the police to your home, send a collector to your home, right? Those are all just scare tactics to try and create urgency for you to give information over the phone right then and there. So now, if you believe you or your loved ones have been targeted, there are resources available. So the contact information for each entity I'll mention during our time together can be found in a packet that I can send out to you if you want additional information in regards to this. But a couple of the areas to think about, right? Reach out. So there are physical resources, but first off, do you have somebody, a trusted family member or friend that you can reach out to? Just having someone that you can trust, and it's basically an unemotional listener that can kind of help put things in perspective. Just somebody to bounce the story off of, right? Once again, then you can always call back. If it's the IRS, what's the number they gave you to call back after you've had time to kind of think things through? Now, you can also report the incident to the state attorney general's office. So once again, we can get you contact information for that. You can contact the Federal Trade Commission for help, and you can use the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau as a resource as well. So once again, at the end here, if anybody would like me to send out that information, I'd be happy to do that. So the next one that we have here is the grandparent scam. Okay, so scammers often use any personal information they can get, and with the internet now, there's, as scary as it may seem, there's a lot of different areas where people can get information about you. So especially if you're on social media and things like that, right? So they're going to try and find as much personal information they can about you to validate their story and form an emotional bond with you or whoever they're targeting, right? So the more personal information, the more effective they can be. That's what makes this scenario known as the grandparent scam, right? They're going to, basically prey on somebody based on knowing information about them. So I'm going to read through kind of a fictional script, but it may be very real in some scenarios, right? It's a fictional script between a grandfather and an unidentified caller, right? Somebody calls up, somebody that they're pretending is their grandfather. So the caller might call up and say, "Hi, Grandpa, it's your favorite grandson. Can you guess which one?" Right? And of course, Grandpa says, "Oh, well, is this Bobby?" Well, yeah. Yeah, of course it's Bobby, right? So Grandpa says, or the caller says, "Yes, Grandpa, it's Bobby. Do you remember what school I'm going to?" And of course, Grandpa thinks about it and he says, "Well, yeah, you're going to state, right? How's school going?" Well, now Grandpa has provided some information that maybe the caller didn't even know, right? Grandpa thinks his name's Bobby, or it's his grandson Bobby, which he confirmed, and then he gave him information about the school that he's going to. So the caller then says, "Well, school's all right. I'm really sorry to call you about this, but I'm in a little bit of trouble. I was at school, and some of my friends and I decided to drive to Mexico for spring break. We were out last night, and I got a speeding ticket. Now I can't get back into the country unless I pay a fine. We're out of cash, and my ATM card won't work down here. Can you wire me some money, and I can pay you back?" Right? Simple request, I guess. Well, and he goes on to mention, "Well, please don't tell Mom and Dad I messed up, but it's only a speeding ticket. I just want to get back home." So once again, he's, the caller, the unidentified caller is, kind of trying to make it urgent, right? Can't get back into the country, is kind of requesting that, oh, don't tell my mom and dad, right? They don't want you getting off the phone and calling somebody else about it. Kind of wants to keep it hush hush. So in this case, Grandpa was almost convinced. He even believed the caller knew his grandchild's name and where he went to school. So you can see how little information how even little information can help validate a scammer's claim. So Grandpa finished the conversation with the caller, but just didn't feel right. He called his Edward Jones financial advisor in this scenario, who in turn contacted fraud investigations here at Edward Jones. Fraud investigations advised Grandpa to contact a family member that he knew to be correct, right? Reach out to somebody is, who you're calling. And it turns out that Bobby was fine and at school, right? Bobby wasn't in Mexico on spring break and unable to get back in the country. So again, very similar common red flags. Well, first of all, the request from Bobby was immediate in nature, right? We kind of mentioned that about the fact that he's in Mexico, in trouble, needs to get back into the country, and out of funds. So and the scammer may plead with the grandparent not to tell his parents, right? But in this scenario, he, jumped off the phone, contacted Edward Jones, asked for some advice. What should I do here? How can I send money? And then was obviously directed to contact a family member at that point in time. So let's see here. So, once you send the money, there is almost always a request for more, right? The situation becomes more critical. Yeah, if Grandpa had, wired a little bit of money to who he thought was his grandson, for instance, maybe the other driver or the passenger of the car needs surgery now, but the doctor won't operate unless he is, paid in cash up front. So, I mean, the story becomes more elaborate, and they once they know they can receive some money out of you, that's when they typically continue to go for more, right? So, what should you do if this happens? Well, first of all, remain calm, right? If you did send money out and now the story is becoming more elaborate and they're requesting more and more funds, right? That's when you should be contacting the authorities or, once again, an Edward Jones representative or even a family member to make sure you're having that conversation, because you don't want to just let it go. Even if you sent the money and now you're like, oh man, maybe I made a mistake there. I shouldn't have sent that. I'm not going to send any more, but I don't want to, I don't necessarily want to tell anybody because I did this. Well, keep in mind, they have the information that, whether or not it was a credit card or you wired funds or you gave them a, check by phone. I mean, there's a number of ways they could potentially just pull additional money without your consent anyway. So once again, this is something that needs to be reported at that point in time. All right, so the next portion here is what we call the romance, long-distance relationship, or even a sweetheart scam. So this true story actually comes from the Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association, and was covered in several national publications. So, New York authorities arrested a woman for the theft of thousands of dollars from an 85-year-old man in what experts refer to as the romance scam. So the two met online and developed a seemingly close relationship over a short period of time. The woman befriended the man by telling him hard luck stories, even claiming she needed money for cancer treatment. She persuaded him not to only give her money, but also sign over his power of attorney. So she used it to obtain a home equity loan and then stole the funds. So once again, red flags were present. The man didn't verify the identity of the person contacting him. This type of fraud occurs more frequently than you may think, and it actually comes in many forms. So it can be especially hurtful to those who are more socially isolated, right? And many people might feel that now, right? During COVID, when we're not getting out and meeting with folks. So what other way do we have to connect with people other than online, right? So when you're feeling socially isolated, for anyone here who has lost a spouse or even a close family member, or perhaps has just moved to a new community, those are other things that you could probably identify with and see how easy it might be to feel alone and try and create a relationship online. So scammers take advantage of loneliness, unfortunately, by pretending to care and creating a social bond, but their real motive is, unfortunately, to defraud you or steal from you, right? So the scammer may use phone calls, emails, mail, social media messages. There's the list goes on and on. Dating websites, Facebook, online games such as Words with Friends, right? As simple as something like that. That seems so innocent, right? They can use all these things to contact their victims, really. So this fraud relies on trust, obviously. So the scammer may lead you to believe you have met before in person at a party or even a social gathering, right? Maybe through a mutual friend. So he or she would want you to find out, or he or she wants to find out what you're passionate about and then prey on those feelings, right? They work to establish a rapport over several months before asking for money, typically, or controls like the power of attorney. But for an urgent need, that will tug at your emotions, right? Often the scammer will say that he or she has exhausted all other resources and the victim holds the last rope. So once again, trying to make that emotional connection. So you can protect yourselves and the ones you love from this type of scam by remaining calm and doing some research, right? It's really just about being diligent, right? To make sure that the best defense is, not to pursue a friendship that has a red flag. If this is, something that you've come across in the past, or speaking with somebody now, instead of finding, social activities and gatherings where you can meet, keep in mind these new friends you meet online, unfortunately, they're not always who they say they are. So be wary of people that you meet on the internet, even if it's through trusted social media sites, date sites, or even through mutual friends. Scammers can hack into your friends' online information. They can create fake pages and posts and things like that to try and get information from you. So now, if a friend requests money, especially if he or she asks for it to be wired to a third party, ask for a copy of his or her driver's license or social security number. Edward Jones fraud investigations can use this information to verify a person's identity. So if the person refuses or cannot produce this information, chances are pretty good he or she is not telling the truth. So remember that in this digital age, fraudulent photos and documents are easily created and altered. So, and it's often this is a difficult thing to spot. So another option is to just simply to refuse funds or to wire funds, right? If this ends the relationship, then you'll know the friend only wanted your money, right? So hopefully that's not the case if it's truly your friend. And the scammer may be angry or try to make you feel guilty for refusing to help. So this will further confirm that we are being targeted for fraud. So keep that in mind. So once again, something like this happens. Step one, always reach out to that trusted family member or friend that you can call and know it's the person you're intending to speak with. If you or someone you love makes a mistake and of trusting someone who turns out to be untrustworthy in the end, while it may hurt in the short term, you can take solace in knowing that you have outsmarted someone who truly did not have your best interests at heart, right, by reporting the incident. So contact your local law enforcement agency, right? They can obviously help, and not saying that you're necessarily going to get the funds back that you wired, but it's a step in the right direction anyway. So now, if you or a loved one was victimized, immediately notify the financial institution, though. Yes, contacting law enforcement is important, but if you sent them bank information, contacting your bank immediately is probably a very good next step, right? Or maybe even first step in that scenario. So, because it may be able to be a scenario, if it's caught quick enough, can be reversed. So, again, just try not to, I know it's easier said than done, right? Do not be fooled, by, somebody just creating a story. Do your research, ask your questions, make sure the person you're talking to is the person you intended to speak with. The next one here, and we're getting towards the end of these, is the lottery and sweepstakes scam. So, so in this scenario, Tony received a phone call from her mother, Monica, who had received a letter from the State Sweepstakes Commission. They were asking her to call an 800 number to claim her cash prize. Monica mentioned that she didn't even recall entering a contest. So good news. Yeah, she hit some big windfall, right? Sometimes it's, what's the saying? If it's too good to be true, right? So, you know, in this scenario, not necessarily, right? Not necessarily good news. Tony was skeptical and contacted her financial advisor, Ruth. Ruth advised Tony to ask Monica to contact the Federal Trade Commission. So as you may suspect, the FTC, or the Federal Trade Commission, confirmed the Sweepstakes Commission didn't even exist. So you've likely encountered this scam one form or another. It's often referred to as the lottery or sweepstakes scam. The common red flags include an unsolicited contact, such as a letter or a phone call or even an email or social media message in this day and age. The contact may seem official, perhaps a letter that appears to be on government or corporate letterhead, and the winnings could be anywhere from a few $100s to tens of millions. Really, the value can range. Many of the lottery and sweepstakes scams involve the scammer claiming to be the publisher's clearinghouse. So I'm sure we're all aware of the publisher's clearinghouse, right? They're going to show up on your doorstep with balloons and a giant check for you, because the name resonates with people, right? We've seen it on TV so many times. So are these easy to debunk? Because the publisher's clearinghouse will never tell you up front that you're a winner. Well, that's something to think about, right? So in one version of the scam, though, the victim is asked to cover the taxes. So this is a little bit different, right? As opposed to just stating, okay, you've won this, right? Well, now they're contacting you saying, well, you won, congratulations. Well, now you have to pay the taxes before receiving the funds, right? So you've won $10,000, but we need you to pay the taxes before we can send the money out. Another scenario involves a request for a bank account number so the winnings can be deposited, right? So we're not going to send you a check. We're going to send this directly to your bank. I just need your bank account information. Congratulations, right? So by getting this small amount of information, though, the scammer can actually remove the money from the victim's account and potentially steal his or her identity. So, take everything out of your banking. Another variation involves an overpayment, right? The individual receives a check in excess of of the fee total, but is told to return a portion of the amount via electronic transmission, right? So they're sending you a check, you're depositing it into your bank. Sounds great. Then they contact you and say, "Oh, we sent you more than we were supposed to. There was a fee that needs to be paid on it. Now we need you to send us your electronic transmission, and so a wire transfer, right? So I need your bank account information, and we'll go ahead and have you send that fee back to us." Well, not only are they pulling that fee, but they're pulling everything out of your bank account. They're zeroing out your account. So once again, they can get very sophisticated. So at the end of the day, is it too good to be true? Is it something that if it's, once again, these lottery or sweepstakes scams, is it something you entered, right? That's a pretty big indicator, even if it was something you entered, because something as prevalent as the publisher's clearinghouse. Maybe a lot of people enter into the publisher's clearinghouse, so they got pretty good odds that maybe you actually did, but it doesn't necessarily mean you won just because somebody's contacting you. So, once again, red flags. The contact is unsolicited, which we've mentioned. You are coached not to tell anybody, right? They don't want you to jeopardize your winnings in this scenario. You'll be likely to be instructed to send money to a treasurer or banker or another person connected to your winnings. However, these people are not connected to your lottery or sweepstakes, right? They're likely victims as well, being used as money mules in certain scenarios where it's just filtering money through the system. So, in addition to taxes and fees, the scammer may ask for money to go through customs or a security or anti-money laundering stamp. However, these are not real. So Once again, stay vigilant. So take steps to protect yourself and those you love. Remember to treat all unsolicited offers with extreme caution. Fully investigate the people and the companies involved, and refrain from providing personal information, especially if you can't confirm the folks that you're speaking with on the phone. So most importantly, I would say though is, excuse me, is to follow your instincts, right? When in doubt, don't provide information. And finally, remember, you should never have to pay money to get money. That's a pretty big red flag there. So, excuse me. So our final scenario here, and I'll jump to that, is Social Security. Social Security scam. Our final scenario revolves around a benefit most, or if not all, older adults receive at this point is Social Security. It's not a surprise that scammers would target this common source of income for seniors. The scheme involves a scammer impersonating someone from the Social Security office to basically misuse your Social Security number or trick you into paying money. So criminals will use calls and emails and letters to obtain your personal information. You received a call from someone claiming to be from the Social Security Administration. The caller advises in this scenario that there's a problem with your Social Security number. The caller may even ask you for your number for verification purposes, or require you to make a payment to avoid the suspension of benefits. So in our scenario, though, Barb receives a call from the Social Security Administration. The person on the other end of the phone tells Barb that the Social Security number was tied to a money laundering, and that her benefits are actually in jeopardy. So the caller went on to say Barb will need to pay a fee so that everything can be straightened out. Well, Barb, not wanting to lose this critical source of income, becomes flustered, but realizes something isn't right. She has never heard of someone getting a call from Social Security office directly. It doesn't feel that it's right to have to pay a fee for a crime that she didn't commit. So Barb takes a deep breath, decides to ask the caller for his or her phone number, so she could check on this claim, and then the call disconnected, right? they've been figured out, so they just dropped the call. So once again, this type of scam is becoming more and more prevalent. So once again, the red flags, right? Man, excuse me. So, the red flags in this scenario, Social Security Administration, they're never going to call you. If there's a problem, they're going to send you a letter. The real Social Security Administration should already know your Social Security number. They shouldn't have to ask for it. You'll never have to pay for a legitimate thing with a gift card, right? If they're saying, oh, you need to buy a gift card, to send us, right? That we can't just take him for, that we can't take a check or whatever the case may be, right? So the gift card portion is always a big thing, and that's in all different types of scams, right? Something that's untraceable, right? They want you to go buy a gift card and send that in as payment. So what should you do? Simply hang up the phone. That's one thing. If a message was left, just don't call the number back that they provided. You can look up the real phone number for Social Security Administration. So if you're just getting a recording on your voicemail and it says to call a certain number, if it's something urgent, Social Security Administration, look up the number for Social Security Administration. Don't necessarily just call back the number that they provided. If you provided your Social Security number, or you think you've been provided information to somebody, contact your local Social Security Administration office so they can at least place an alert on your number. This will also make sure that your benefits don't get diverted as well. So I know that's a lot of information. Went over a couple different scenarios there. I'm going to hand this back to Danielle so she can open up. I think she has everybody muted right now. So we can go over questions if anybody has questions, and go from there.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much, Chad. We're going to go ahead and stop our recording today.